Welcome to our Hen House. This is Jasmin Singer.
And this is Mariann Sullivan.
And this week, we're here with a Hen Report. Every activist needs to know the news, and we're here to deliver it. They want to know what's happening to animals and how that fits into the rest of the world. And we try to keep you up with at least some of what's happening with animals and with animal activism. And Mariann, I know this is something that is very, very close to your heart.
Well, I'm kind of a news junkie, so I just assume everybody else is too. Which isn't to say that we could possibly cover all the news. But, we'll try to come up with stuff that other people are reporting on and reliable outfits are reporting on and let people know about it, because it's really hard to follow it all. It's not like there's one place where you can collect all the news about. It's not really, I was thinking before, I'm not sure our beat is animal rights. Our beat is animal activism. Both what animal activists are doing. We want to report on that. And also, what are the stories out in the world that people who want to do animal activism, people who just want to talk about animals to other people, which is animal activism, after all, a form of it, it should be up on so that they can horrify everybody.
Yeah.
And there's plenty. There's just plenty of that.
So you said you are let me actually say that we are going to have someone drop in during our Hen Report today, which is a little unusual for our Hen Reports, but she might just drop in the middle of us talking, which I think is awesome. And we're just going to go with it. But just know we might have a visitor.
We're not going to say who it is?
Yes. Now I'm worried that people are going to think it's Tiny Chef and they'll inevitably be disappointed.
Oh, poor Kathy. She's important too.
Yeah, no, it's Kathy Stevens from Catskill Animal Sanctuary, who has definitely been on the show in the past. She has some big news on a personal level that she's going to be sharing, but also I think we're just going to be chatting. All right, so you were talking to me recently. You mentioned you're a news junkie. Don't I know it? You were talking about
I do sometimes go on total news fasts. I did that at the beginning of the administration for, I don't know, probably 6 weeks, 2 months. And then I had the flu in there too. I just watched no news whatsoever. But now that's over.
It's all news all the time. When I'm working at the radio station, we always have the TV on mute, put on MSNBC on mute. I feel like that's you right now. I can imagine you with multiple TVs all around you.
Well, it's not like I watch real news. I watch pundits and have to switch off among them because I get annoyed.
Yeah, well, you're you.
Yeah.
You get annoyed fast. But you were talking to me about how there's a disturbing parallel between the way the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, operates and the meat industry.
Well, this kind of occurred to me when I was thinking of doing this, because every week we talk about stuff and it's in the context of the crisis going on around us that, some people would say, I think, how can we think about animals? I mean, not our audience, but when all of this is going on, animals always have to wait. And it just feels like it's all one piece to me in so many ways. And of course, we can't betray the animals because you never know. Maybe this will be a time of extraordinary change. Sometimes crises leads to change, and we have to be there to fight for the animals. But also, I imagine we're all kind of worried about other things going on in the world, which, is insane. And I don't want to start reporting on that, but it did occur to me, this story with ICE agents and shipping these people, and this horrible video from people being shipped to this gulag in El Salvador. And, they're being bent over. It was just so, I would say dehumanizing. They're treating them like animals. They really are. Yeah,
in both systems. But there are those who believe in what they're doing. And, other people are in it for the money or the power, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you got to figure that all these ICE agents and all the people who work in the meat industry aren't monsters. Maybe they are. I don't know. They look like monsters when we look at them. But, people are people and they do things for different reasons. And some people probably truly believe, people in the meat industry, they think they're feeding the world. They say it all the time. I'm sure they think it. They don't recognize that people could eat other things. And so they think it's worth it, even though it's hard. And I'm sure there are ICE agents like that too, who just think these are terrible, terrible human beings, even though, of course, they haven't had any due process, and we don't actually know which ones are terrible and which ones are not, or anything else about them. I mean, obviously, as you pointed out, there's a lot of corruption here. People are corrupted. There's money to be made easy to corrupt the people working in the meat industry because they're desperate. But I think for most people, it's kind of a combination of,
Yeah.
people believe what they want to believe. And, when they can make money at something, whether either because they're desperate or because the money's good or whatever, they will believe it's a good thing to do. There are probably a few of them in both that are kind of in it, at least partly for the sadism. But, that's not
Well,
everybody.
there's another commonality. They're all about breaking up families, whether it's slaughtering animals or the work that ICE is doing. So,
And the other thing that I think is true of both systems is that the brutality all has to be done by the people on the ground, the people who are making the least money of all of them. And it's the people in charge, whether it's the politicians on the deportation side or the meat industry executives who just can pretend it's all for the best and we have to do this and not feel at all responsible for the cruelty. I actually think, we're doing a great job. So always the really hardest burden of the ugliness and the guilt and the need to assuage the guilt falls on the workers.
well, part
I
of
don't know.
what
There's everything I say, I feel like I'm leaving out the nuance on the other side. This is a really hard topic to talk about, but like having talked about it, I think it feels even stronger.
and part of what makes this moment so terrifying, this moment in the news cycle, this moment in the administration, this moment in the world, this moment in democracy's demise, is that it's not just what's happening, but it's how easy it is for people to look away. And I think that is something we're certainly used to as animal activists. The suffering is sometimes right in front of us, literally sometimes, or maybe it's on the news or in our neighborhoods, or I don't know. For some people, it might be in the mirror. Yet people are so quick to turn away, and not out of malice necessarily, but out of habit, right, or comfort, or
I think
fear.
I think that we're very, very vulnerable to the despair that is caused by that reality that we know so much about what's going on and we try to tell people, and even people we love look away, and that it takes a lot to keep going in the face of that and to see people do that. And so when something else happens like this that rings those same bells of people just looking away from suffering, I think we know better than others that, that's what people do.
Well, I think that for animal activists, that's what makes our fear sharper,
Yeah, I agree.
because we know how good people are at ignoring pain that isn't
Yeah.
theirs, and we know how easily it could just become background noise.
But we also know that there are heroes and we have to find them. We have to keep looking for them. We have to find them. People who are doing the right thing. And, in this story there is as well.
So
I don't want to
something
I feel myself tempted to get into like talking about all the details of what's going on in immigration, and, we want to stick to the animals. But I do want to like reiterate something that I spoke
Yeah.
about last week. Was it last week or the week before?
uh
That I was very excited that one of our listeners wrote back to us. It was like when I said that we have to start explaining to people that if they believe in God and they believe in an all-powerful and ever-living God and they believe that hell exists, which, are things that a lot of people believe in, then they are clearly going to hell.
oh my God, we're doing
Every
it again.
time I say this, you like,
I don't know,
you
because
have a heart
it
attack. But
scares
I
me.
just think, because I'm not saying people are going to hell because I don't believe in that. But if you believe in that, how do you avoid the conclusion that, I mean, assuming that some people don't know that animals, are real or have actual lives. Fewer and fewer and fewer people can get away with believing that. And some people don't know what we do to them.
Yeah.
But, they're lying dead on your plate. So you got to know something bad happened to them. I don't see any way to avoid that conclusion. But anyway, a longtime beloved listener wrote in. I don't have permission to say who it was, so I won't. And said she had a conversation with a number of clergy people who she knows, who she's friends with.
I won't say her name either, but when you go to the beach, you get this condition. You get there's sand all over you. Continue.
That was so pathetic.
Yeah, I know it was. Someone
Anyway,
laughed.
anyway, uh, and she wouldn't say that she had like a totally satisfying conversation. She said they were still very good at deflecting it, but it just made me so happy to think that that conversation was had as a result of something I said, or at least partially as a result of something I said on the podcast. And it made me think more about the fact, I was brought up in the church in Catholicism, and sin, I think sin is a better word for meat eating, especially if we're talking about it in the context of religion. Because I think most of us think of, or at least I do, think of harm kind of in utilitarian terms. And I think people let themselves off the hook in utilitarian terms, saying, well, what I do doesn't matter. Like there are literally billions of animals being killed in factory farms, and the tiny bit I contribute just doesn't do any harm. But if you think of it as sin, it's different. That's not the only calculation you make on determining whether you're committing a sin. A sin is a sin. It's wrong. It doesn't matter how you count the harm. The harm is to yourself, and I guess for people who believe, to your relationship with God. So yeah, it's important to think about what harm it causes, but there's harm regardless, and it's about what's right and what's wrong.
I think that some people, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I grew up as a Reformed Jew, we didn't really use the word sin, despite it being.
We used it a lot. And
Yes,
I mean, I didn't grow up in like a really harsh Catholic environment. It was relatively benign, but sin was definitely a factor.
So I believe that some people talk about sin as what separates you from God. And when you participate in violence, especially violence that's unnecessary, I don't know what violence wouldn't be, but
Well, self-defense. I mean,
self-defense, sure. So that separation grows. And even if you don't see it, even if the system makes it easy not to see it. So it's not necessarily about, I don't know, tallying up harm to justify a habit. It's about kind of recognizing that you're part of this whole system that is based on
Yeah,
sin.
yeah. The analogy I always make, and I know I've said this before, but what the hell? It's to watching child pornography. Like if you watch child pornography, you are probably not expanding the amount of child pornography that's being produced. Like it's a huge, huge industry, and by you just watching it, especially even if you don't even pay for it, it's not going to make any difference in the amount of harm done. But it's a sin. I mean, who wouldn't say it's a sin?
Well, I think that a real sin is this
And
article.
just to draw the analogy, eating meat is the same.
And so is writing about meat in the way that the New York Times did this
Oh,
past
nice
week.
segue.
I am disgusted.
Yeah, this is the worst article I've ever
I
seen.
am utterly disgusted.
So we're going to tell everybody about it.
You
just
get to
be
share our
kind.
pain. This is called Meat is Back
Well,
on
I mean, what is
Plates.
going on? Like, who paid for this article?
Yeah, so the New York Times published this piece declaring that meat is back on plates and in politics. But honestly, what's striking about the article, other than the fact that the New York Times is unbelievably inconsistent, isn't that catchy headline. It's what's missing, because the article reads like it's a celebration of meat's cultural comeback. It's packed with these anecdotes about tallow frosted wedding cakes and TikTok carnivores, but in glorifying this resurgence, it hardly even engages with any of the consequences to what they say is this return, which I don't agree with at all.
They don't talk at all about, like, maybe the industry did some things that might have influenced this return. Like, maybe there was some propaganda that came out. I mean, it is true. I don't think it's a lie. We all know, like, plant-based products are not doing as well as we had hoped they would, and we all know that there's a lot of meat conversation especially in the whole MAGA world, and like they're all going to die. Well, I guess we're all going to.
I like that.
We're all going to die too, but they don't. Nothing like that. It's like it just happened.
Right. To write about a $104 billion meat industry without talking about who gets hurt, and without talking about how, and without talking about, like what you just said, the players involved in this boom is really just telling half the story, and that's not journalism, that's marketing. And so this should have had a marketing disclaimer at the top
The meat
of it.
industry should have had to pay for it.
They
which
probably
they probably did.
Yeah. I am so tired of shitty reporting. I really am.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, this was a terrible article. Let's switch gears. I was so excited to join you last week in Ithaca at Cornell, where you teach animal law, because A, I just have fun with you when we're on a little mini road trip, and B, Ithaca is so fun. But C, the one Crystal Heath, who we're fairly obsessed with, she spoke at your class about bird flu. And she's a veterinarian who the industry absolutely hates and loathes, which she incorporates into her talk. And she was amazing. Your students were amazing. They stayed after for a while to ask questions.
A bunch of them were able to stay. Yeah. No, they were really engaged. I mean, she even mentioned that they were just, because you go to classrooms and a lot of times students are like typing away or whatever, and they were just riveted by her talk. She was great.
Yeah,
and
she was.
And they were so, even like they're really interested in the topic, and still so much of this news is news to them. Learning about bird flu and antibiotics and all of the horrors. The class was specifically on externalities. So not almost all of my classes are about the harm to the animals, but this class is on all of the other harms that the meat industry does, which of course could be an entire course on itself. But, I can only fit in so much, and I have to focus on the animals. But they were great, and the information was shocking, and Crystal was amazing.
Yeah, she was. And one of the things that she mentioned was that some of her footage was going to be, like her undercover footage, was going to be used in 60 Minutes, which now, since your class it aired this past Sunday, I think. And so there's this segment on bird flu that 60 Minutes did, and we're going to, of course, link to it in the show notes. I have to really strongly recommend that you watch this 15-minute segment if you're listening. I also sent it around to a few people. It's really unreal. I mean,
it's terrifying.
It's too real, and so therefore it's unreal. The scientists who they were talking to are completely terrified. One of the scientists said, "I know I'm going to sound alarmist, but this could wipe out humanity."
Yeah, of course it could. It's a virus. Like, have we learned nothing?
Have we learned nothing?
And, the bird flu, I mean, right now, the bird flu that we've seen in the U.S. has, it's spread through millions of birds, and it's spread through dairy cows, and plenty of other animals have gotten it, though I don't think any of them has had the massive spread, because probably hasn't infected animals who are kept so closely confined in other species. But cats can get it, and humans have gotten it, not very many, and they haven't gotten that sick, except for one guy who died. And he had pre-existing conditions. What does that sound like? But in past times, bird flu, just a variation of this one. And, viruses have variations. Have we learned nothing? Has been 50% lethal among humans. So if this virus were to translate into something, because it's breeding everywhere, it's reproducing everywhere. And if it were to become something like that former widely spread type of bird flu it was mostly in Asia, it would kill half of the people who got it.
Oh, we have a guest. Hang on one sec. This is Kathy. We have a guest. We told our listeners that this is a different episode, that we were going to have a drop-by visitor. And here you are, the one and only Kathy Stevens. It's so good to see your face.
Yippee Skippy. Likewise,
Skippy.
Likewise, you guys.
So what is happening? You have a big announcement. A big life change in your world.
A big life change after 25 years growing this organization. I am stepping down.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I want to know the plans for you and the plans for Catskill.
Can I just say that that's an era, like if there ever were such a thing, Kathy. This is going to take me a minute, but yes, like Mariann said, what happens now? I mean, how do things move forward? I don't understand. I'm so confused.
So don't be confused. So this has been many, many, many months in the making. It's actually, in my mind, been years in the making. And in fact, we have probably had this conversation before, the three of us, or certainly Jasmin, you and I. I never wanted to be somebody who worked until I had a foot in the grave. I am deeply passionate about this work and believe in it with all my heart, and I want to support the next generation of people. But from a selfish perspective, there are other things I care about too. And in this fraught, stressful world, I want to do those things while I still can do those things. That's number one. Number two, sort of more magnanimously, I'm going to be 67 in July.
Happy birthday. You look at least 10, 15 years younger than that, by the way.
Well, I'm not. Thank you. And I believe that there's a certain point where founders in particular have to recognize that it's time for somebody younger. I can't stand technology. I can't stand it. I cannot wait to throw away all these devices. I am not good, particularly at absorbing the rapid pace of change and the implications for running a nonprofit, particularly around messaging and fundraising. So it's time. The organization needs somebody younger. And
I totally hear you about leaving before it's too late to do anything new. So I really want to know what the new is.
Oh my goodness. So look, my partner David and I are very physically active, and we've always I've always put him second. This organization has been my first for a quarter century. So I look forward to putting him first and my relationships first. But we are huge outdoor lovers. So we are going to travel. We are going to do more kayaking and biking and dog walking and exploring. And I've always been extremely close with my sister and my nieces and nephews. And the next generation is starting to come. There's a baby, and there's one on the way, and there's been a marriage. And so I want to experience these little people and be in their lives in a way that I wasn't in the lives of my nieces and nephew in their earliest years, because this work was completely all-consuming.
You said that selfishly speaking, but Kathy, can we just pause and interrogate that moment for just a second?
Yeah.
It isn't selfish at all. I mean, you must really know this. You're an animal and you're taking care of your own animal rights, and you're leaving before you have a chance to get burnt out. I think that that's heroic.
So what is next for Catskill?
Look, right now the organization is we have an extraordinary team. We are going to post for an ED. It's taken us a while to get the job description tight and the way we wanted it to be, and to ask those questions. In this dramatically different era, what does that new ED need to look like? And so we're going to be posting the job description probably this week, taking our time. I'm not running away. I've given June 30th as my final date, but I will certainly be available to handhold, to mentor, to support, to help onboard in whatever ways that I can. So, that's what's next, is finding that right person.
There might be somebody listening right now out there who is saying, "Oh, that's the job I want."
Ooh, would that be the coolest?
That would be pretty great. I love that.
So where would people find out about when you do finalize the job posting?
It's going to be all over the place. There'll be a posting on the website. There'll be a posting on LinkedIn. That we'll share it on the vegan job boards. It'll be around. Great. We'll share it on Indeed. So it'll be all over the place. And I'm going to be reaching out to all kinds of people, sharing it and asking for ideas.
You know so much. And you have so much, so much about the industry, so much about animals, so much about sanctuary work. I hate to think of that all just disappearing. Do you have plans to write a book, another book? Do you have plans to share your knowledge? And we were told, though I'm not sure, that was even something that you wanted to talk about today. Is that right?
Well, I do. I have been invited by my publisher to write another book.
Excellent.
Now,
Excellent.
I don't know. You know what, you guys, I'm sure you can relate to this because you guys both go 900 miles an hour, right? You're involved in so many different things. I need to do nothing for a bit, just open up that space. And I don't even know what that looks like for a bit in order to figure out what
I hear
comes
you.
next.
No, you have to take a moment.
You have to take a moment. But
after
I have
when
also
something-
been, Mariann, and I'm really contemplating this, been invited to do a college speaking tour. So,
Excellent. I love that idea.
I got a couple irons in the fire, but I don't want any right now. I wrote any.
I know I'm not being fair, but
I will tell
I
you,
think people will be wondering.
But what I do know, I will never leave this world. It's in my DNA. I live it, breathe it, think it, dream it, right? So I will never leave this world. I am ready. And honestly, CAS is ready. I'm saying this on behalf of CAS for me to step aside. So it's exciting. It's going to be bittersweet. I'm going to sob and sob and sob, but
of course,
it's the right time.
So, Kathy, I don't mean to talk about something so ugly, but the administration right now, like, I don't know what it would be like to retire at a moment when all of this is happening in the world. And it might be exactly the perfect time and it might be fraught. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are relating to the Trump administration and, specifically as it relates to your time retiring and the Trump administration's kind of way that they're dealing with animals.
Well, it's very interesting. It's too early to know really what they're going to do, but I sort of have 3 buckets of concern, and 2 of them are connected. The first concern is around the Farm Bill. The second concern, and I'll elaborate on all of these. The second one is around the intensity of this anti-regulatory environment. And there's an intersection between those 2 things. And then the third is that I read somewhere that some in the animal rights space have a concern that it will be more difficult for animal rights concerns to get airtime because of all the noise and the chaos and the way that Trump is so good at creating noise and chaos that the things he doesn't want to have airtime don't get airtime. So the Farm Bill, it is this giant omnibus bill that covers kind of everything related to agricultural policy, but also nutrition policy. It's a $400+ billion in expenditures for every chunk of time that the bill is passed. It hasn't passed in the last 2 cycles. It was supposed to be passed a couple of years ago. It wasn't. So it got pushed to the next year with an extension. It was supposed to pass last year and it wasn't. It got pushed to this year with an extension. It is now supposed to be voted on in the House and Senate in the fall. It covers everything from subsidies and crop insurance to it's what funds our SNAP benefits. About 75% of that $400 billion every 5 years goes to cover food stamps. But my concern about it is this. There are mandated programs, non-discretionary programs, like crop insurance, for example, and like the SNAP program. But then there are discretionary things. And this is where my concerns about the Farm Bill intersect with my concerns about deregulation. The EATS Act, if your listeners are familiar with the EATS Act.
We talk about the EATS Act pretty much every week, though they don't call it the EATS Act anymore. They have a new name for it.
Okay, correct. It's no longer the EATS Act, and it's now been buried in the Farm Bill.
We're obsessed with it.
Okay, and my concern is that because it's not garnering the attention from the mainstream media like it was at some point, that it's gonna slip through, and that the years of slow progress on things like Prop 12 out of California, banning gestation crates, etc., that those things could disappear. if the focus is not in the way that it has been. And I don't see that it is, that the focus is there in the way that it has been. So that's my concern, like Prop 12 is going to go away under this administration. A second related concern is about all the anti-regulatory nonsense. And this new woman, I can't remember her name, the one who's the head of the Meat Institute.
The Meat Institute? I'm sorry, I don't know who that is.
Okay, that's okay.
So whoever it is.
So whoever it is, two huge lobbying groups for the meat industries several years ago merged and became the Meat Institute. And now the Meat Institute is lobbying quietly for the most outrageous things that would be horrifying for humans and horrifying for animals, making factory farms and slaughterhouses exempt from the Clean Water Act, increasing line speed at slaughterhouses.
Right.
And
yeah.
Well, they're already doing that.
Well, they did that. Right. And then at one point he wanted to remove all limits, right? And that was rebuffed.
Yeah, they have a new push, or at least a new commitment to making meat processing speeds faster and making that permanent.
Right.
And they're calling it like a win for efficiency, I think.
They are calling it a win. Yes, they are. And so I am terrified about the combination of those two things. And then the farm bill and what's going to be snuck into the farm bill, and this anti-regulatory environment that I think could have such horrifying implications for farm animals.
Unbelievable. I mean, the administration is, and everyone is talking about how there's no direct link between these faster speeds and injuries. And it's such bullshit. And it's like, also the slaughterhouse workers, like you said, they're all telling a different story.
Remember how many COVID deaths and outbreaks and deaths were linked to slaughterhouses?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
yeah,
it's hard. I mean, the Biden administration was a complete disaster for animals. I'm not going to deny it. And it's hard to believe that it's going to get worse, but it is.
I often quote you, Jasmine, when you say hope is a strategy, and I am finding it harder to hold on to hope. And that feels horrible. But name a cause that we care about that isn't under threat.
Yeah.
Well, the way I think about hope now is that it kind of doesn't matter. Like, what else are you going to do with your life?
So
are you just going to go along? Are you just going to be that person? Like, if you don't have hope, you don't have hope, but you still got to fight.
So you're basically saying remove the conversation about hope because it's becoming irrelevant, Mariann?
Well, if you're saying, well, if I don't have hope, then I don't have to do this. That's not true. You have to do it in order to be you. Like, in order to live like that Mary Oliver quote, your one wild and precious life.
Right.
You're going to spend it like doing what?
Yeah. And I have moments when I think, okay, you know what? Yes, the Supreme Court recently did a decent thing temporarily, right?
Absolutely. We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know what's going to be happening. And could this become another 1960s? Could there be that many people in the streets? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. But I think you're right. Whether or not we are hopeful is irrelevant. I would just like personally to feel more hopeful.
I agree.
More consistently hopeful.
I would enjoy it. Yeah.
But to fight like hell and to fight smarter and to fight more strategically is more important than it's ever been.
Absolutely. And I know you're going to be back in that fight, but first you're going to take a good long break and get your brain back.
Yeah,
and,
summer.
Get your peace back. But I would never suspect you as one to give up. So thank you so much, Kathy, for sharing it all with us.
Oh, it has been an absolute privilege as always. And Mariann, I know you can't make it to the retirement party. Jasmine, I hope you can make it, but I know you guys are busy women.
Oh, well, if I can't, then we'll have to celebrate another time, and we can raise a glass to hope or despair. I don't care. But regardless, we'll all be here anyway.
Yeah.
So I mean, until bird flu gets the vegans too, then we'll be gone.
Oh
anyway.
my goodness.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. We love you. We wish you all of the very best, and definitely
Absolutely.
keep us posted on that job offering, and we'll post it when it pops up.
Thanks, guys. Keep on keeping on. Love you both.
Love you.
Mwah.
Thank you.
Love to everybody there, including the animals. Bye.
Well, that was fun to have our first just random visitor. You know what would be funny, except for probably I would hate this idea, but also I think it would be funny if Vicky randomly chose people to drop in on us during
And
the
we didn't
Hen
know who they were
Report.
going to be.
And we didn't know, and they just show up at some point.
Yeah, maybe not.
Okay. All right. So
There are many people I don't like.
Really?
Have I ever mentioned that?
I didn't know.
I think we need to be sure.
Really, I had no idea. All right.
All
Well,
right, we were kind of in the middle of a story when Kathy dropped in, but it wasn't really the middle. We had talked about bird flu. We had talked about my class. We had talked about 60 Minutes, but we had not talked about the fact that the dairy industry in the area that we are living in is exploding beyond imagination, and nobody is talking about bird flu, and we're all going to die.
Well, okay.
Well, we're all going to die anyway.
I mean,
it's so annoying that the vegans can die just as easily as the non-vegans. So they're expanding dairy. I mean, the government, of course, is using our tax money to get all of these huge dairy outfits, and they're processing plants. So there's this huge, a $1.2 billion Chobani plant is going to be built in Rome, which is in New York. And then they're already building a Fairlife, like disgusting Fairlife, which has had like the worst animal rights investigations you can imagine, are building a plant in Webster, which is right down the road from Rochester, like seriously right next door.
Like 10 minutes.
And also the government is paying for that. And they paid money to a nearby county to prepare the site for development for Chobani. They've got this jobs program. Yeah, these are not going to be dairies. These are going to be processing plants. But what the plan is to expand New York State's dairy industry, which is already like too big and too scary and too horrible. And I hate driving around and passing one of these hideous outfits. And I'm just so pissed off about it.
Yeah, I mean, the headlines are...
Nobody's talking about bird flu. Right, it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Have we now learned anything? The headlines are painting this picture of economic growth and job creation, but it's completely missing the cost to... Let's just for a second remove the animals from the discussion because everyone's so good at doing that anyway. Let's remove the environment too. No one's talking about the cost to public health either.
But let's go back to the environment because everybody listening.
Bring in the environment.
I mean, they're cows. Like the worst thing for the environment, the worst possible thing for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, bird flu.
My tax money. I'm so pissed off.
I know, me too.
All right,
me too.
People listen to
the cross species.
Our local.
The cross-species transmission should be raising more alarm bells than it is, especially in Western New York, where...
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret anymore that cows catch bird flu really easily, and just watch the 60 Minutes piece. It'll
just watch
if you're not aware of this yet, it'll scare the socks off you.
But you know what? Like I know that Kathy was, and you were just talking about hope, blah blah blah. But I have to say, Crystal Heath, the woman gives me hope.
And, she's a fighter.
She's not just one woman. Like she is one woman, but she is really impacting so many others. You know, including those in the veterinary profession, including those who are, major stakeholders. And
she's a real leader.
Exactly.
She has put together like coalitions and brought together the people in the veterinary profession, few and far between as they are, who deeply care about these issues. Deeply. And, the more there are, the more there are. You create a safe space for people, and suddenly they figure out that they actually care.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. All right. I'm completely lost on our notes here. I'm looking back at it. Oh, there it is. Okay. I see it.
This Politico story just sort of fit, so I thought I would mention it. USDA's $1 billion bird flu plan uses money intended for schools and food banks. So as I mentioned, this is from Politico. And so they've put together this $1 billion plan for fighting bird flu. And the way they're paying for it, because, we want to cut taxes on all the rich people and we want to cut everything and we have no money. So they came up with something to raid. And that's like, there's this program, and it's not even that much money, but it's to help schools and food banks buy fresh food from local farmers. And so kids might have like real food to eat in schools, and food banks would have real food to distribute to people. And so that's how they're going to fight bird flu in the whole country. Well, this is the program they've come up with to finance that.
So just reactive, just being reactive is what they're doing.
And there had been $1 billion in funding to that local program. That was done under the Biden administration. So I guess it's not that small. It is a fair amount of money. But, it's a big country. And it's a great idea, like getting food from local farms. I don't know what it probably also includes like animal-based food. I don't know whether it does. But obviously it would include a lot of fruits and vegetables. God forbid we should give that to kids. Huh. Better we should cure bird flu so we can have more eggs and chicken.
All right. Let's move on to this.
I put all these bad stories together.
Yeah, let's move on to this sentient media story.
Federal inspectors found antibiotics in beef, quote, raised with antibiotics. They took no action. I mean, the headline kind of tells it all. This is another story from the wonderful, wonderful sentient media. What would we do without them? What would we know? We would know nothing. This involves, some minor meat companies known as JBS, Cargill, and Tyson. They have been sampling the meat that is labeled antibiotic-free, this is beef, or raised without antibiotics, and found that in a significant percentage, I think it's 20% of the samples, there was antibiotics actually in the meat. I mean, even if they're given antibiotics, the antibiotics don't actually necessarily show up in the meat. So it's probably a much higher. They're probably giving antibiotics to all of them. The letters that uncovered this were obtained by Farm Forward, so kudos to them. And according to this guy, Keith Nachman, he's not concerned about immediate health impacts. Actually, consuming antibiotic residue doesn't cause illness, according to them. It's the worry that antibiotic resistance will arise and then we'll have greater germs. And I think that's obviously true. I don't know whether consuming them causes no harm whatsoever. It doesn't seem like taking random antibiotics is good for you. But the thing is that people are freaked out when they find out that there's antibiotics in the meat. They think that's what it's all about, unless you inform them that it has more to do with giving the germs an opportunity to develop into antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Because germs are very, 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 very smart. And they're constantly, not smart, but they're constantly changing to adjust and to overcome whatever things are put in their way. So, the real risk is that they will develop antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which, of course, is a huge, huge problem, growing bigger. But I think just telling people that there's antibiotics in the meat is actually the thing that really freaks them out. Like telling them the whole story of how antibiotic-resistant bacteria develops is too hard for people to understand. It confuses them. Telling them that there's antibiotics in the meat grosses people out. I have seen that happen. I'm pretty sure that's true.
I mean, of
course, they charge more money for this, too. They charge more money for, quote-unquote, antibiotic-free meat.
The mislabeling is so deceptive. But I think what makes me so angry when I read about this kind of thing is how much it undermines as you said, like the public health efforts to combat these antibiotic resistance. Like, I don't know. The World Health Organization says that this is a crisis. It's like one of the top...
Yeah, it's a huge crisis.
One of the top global health threats. And the USDA is relying on self-reported documentation without third-party testing. What?
Like people used to die, like of strep throat, or used to get very, very, very sick. Like all sorts of things that are caused by bacteria. And now we just think, you just take antibiotics and it'll be gone, which is true. But, if the antibiotics can't beat it, we're all going to die.
Oh my God.
How many times am I going to say that?
I was just thinking that, this is intense. This is an intense episode. Remember when we used to be indefatigably positive?
Well, I don't know whether we're not being positive. Like learning, if we were negative, we wouldn't bother to learn any of this. We would just turn our eyes away and give up. I think not giving up is a way to be positive. And learning what's really going on is a way to not give up in the hopes that you can use this information in some way.
Yeah, well...
Do you think nobody's going to want to listen?
Probably.
This is too depressing. Except for that one person out there, and we're doing this for you. So I hope you appreciate it.
The one who gets sand all over herself when she's at the beach? That one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
That one, exactly.
We're doing it for you. We know that if there's one download this week, it's you. All right, there's more shitty news.
Yeah, I know. All right,
We do have good news later.
I'll talk about this one really quickly, but I think it's something that we really need to know about.
Talk about it in pig Latin or something so that we don't understand it.
No, go away.
Okay.
Trump opens a huge marine protected zone to commercial fishing. This is in the Times. And yet this is, the president said the move was aimed at making the United States the world's dominant seafood leader. Yeah, that sounds like the president. Dominant is like a word that he obviously loves. And so why everything is up to the president. I thought we had branches of government, but apparently we just elect a king every 4 years. I don't know. But anyway, he said on Thursday he was allowing commercial fishing in one of the world's largest ocean reserves, introducing industrial operations for the first time in more than a decade to a vast area of the Pacific dotted with coral, do you say that, atolls? And populated by endangered sea turtles and whales. And this is the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument. And this is like 500,000 square miles. So we're talking about a big area. And apparently it has been protected from commercial fishing. And, there's a lot of people, some of them, are local, many of whom I'm sure are not, who want to fish there and who want to come and kill all the fish and do commercial fishing. I mean, people are allowed to do local fishing now. So that's depressing. All right, I'm going to move on now.
Yeah,
I promise, because I really like this next story that we saved.
You better hurry. The one listener is thinking about turning it off.
New documentary follows, quote, incredible 87-year-old vegan ultra runner Paul Yude. This is from Plant-Based News. And, I just love a story about an old vegan who apparently, they're doing this documentary about him because what he's trying to do is to complete 100 ultra marathons before his 100th birthday. I mean, God love this guy. Oh, I say that all the time, don't I? That's my new expression. God love him.
So that he doesn't go to hell.
And it's going to be called More Like Paul, and it's directed by Damien Scaberis. I think it's a short film, but I am excited about seeing this. I want to see this because I bet this guy is really a pip. And he has to average approximately 6 ultra marathons. I don't even know how long an ultra marathon is. 6 ultra marathons per year to meet his target of 100, because he doesn't have that many. He's 87. He doesn't have that many years left before this happens. God, I hope he makes it. That story made me happy.
Well, and he's not just.
It also made me feel like a loser.
I also want to say it's not just about personal achievement, because he's fundraising for animal rights organizations like Viva. And he emphasizes respect over compassion when he's discussing our relationship with animals. And I really love that.
I like that.
Remember, we were talking in the last couple of weeks just about the word compassion. I think when Colleen Patrick Goudreau was on, and I was saying how I feel like the word compassion has gotten really watered down over the last, 10, 15, 20 years.
I think respect is a really good substitute. I think people can hear that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and the quote from him is, "I want to do as much as I can for the animals." I love him.
Let's get him on the podcast.
I'm as healthy as I've ever been. I'm as fit as I've ever been, and I'm living my best. I want to keep going as long as I can.
We should get him on the podcast in between miles, maybe. All right, let's talk about this a recent Faunalytics study that came out.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this because I think this could be really useful for people. The economic impacts of a plant-based transition, exploring 2 growth scenarios. And Faunalytics is doing some astounding work. I really love what they're doing. And I mean, this, they don't oversell it. This can't predict the future. It can't, model everything. But they did do this pretty serious study of what would happen if we went more plant-based. One in which we went a little bit more plant-based, and one in which we went a lot more plant-based. And in both situations, it would be good. There would be more jobs. That was one consideration. Obviously, that would be a lot higher. I guess, plant-based agriculture, I mean, I don't really know why, but plant-based agriculture must require more jobs, and they're much better jobs. But it also said in the smaller of our 2 growth scenarios, the industries affected by a plant-based shift would contribute about 0.3% more to GDP, and et cetera, et cetera. The larger transition to giving up animal agriculture, not giving it up, but, transitioning to some extent, would be enormous and would contribute 4% more to GDP, 2% more to total tax revenue, and 4% more to total labor income. Now, I know these are dry statistics and everything. I just think that if this is something that you are out there advocating for, you need to look at this report because it has a lot of great information here and on topics that we're not usually all that well equipped to make a good argument. Mm-hmm. And the fact that there would be these enormous economic benefits, I just think is something that people don't think of, and that, that's something that a lot of people can hear. I'm just reading from the summary. There's a whole report. So there's really a lot of ammunition here for people who are interested in making those kinds of arguments and learning more about them.
Well, finally, Mariann, I hope that our listeners stayed with us. Why don't you talk about this? Because this was a little hard to find, but we found an Instagram post that we'll link to.
Senator Schiff's no dairy work. I didn't know he was doing no dairy work, though he is vegan. So I found this piece on Instagram from Free From Harm. And he's on the Ag Committee. And apparently Senator Marshall, who's also on the Ag Committee, introduced this Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act, like that they would replace, they don't want to use skim milk anymore, probably because of some like bullshit RFK thing. I don't know. And everybody was really excited and were gushing over this and talking about how great the dairy industry and proposing ways to increase dairy consumption. And Senator Schiff spoke up and he didn't oppose moving from skim milk to whole milk. He just said, well, yeah, then let's add soy milk too. And I think that is a great idea. And I hope he can make this happen.
Yeah, cool.
Because, why not? Why not give kids the option? That's all he's arguing for. Yeah. Well, of course, we know why not. But well, good for him.
Yeah, and from a good political story to a ridiculous one, Spain just made headlines for allowing vegan children to eat vegan food in school canteens, not providing vegan food, allowing it in 2025. Is that? Yeah. I mean, do I have that right? Is there something I'm missing?
When I first saw that story, I thought, oh wow, like we're such losers here. Everybody is better at us than everything. And then I saw what it was actually about. This is by Jordi Casamachana on Vegan FTA. And I just saw, I mean, I guess it's good. They're also, it includes a guarantee that vegans can eat vegan food, either because schools offer vegan options or because they're allowed to bring it from home. Like, really? Like, they had to, pass a new policy, a new regulation to allow kids to bring food from home.
I don't know. I think
not like sit down and force them to eat dead animals.
The whole thing is oddly congratulatory.
I guess that's a plus. I don't know.
I mean, come on. This is ridiculous.
Well, it is a plus. It's better than it was.
Fine, it's a tiny step.
But sometimes I think that we are just so pathetic. And by we, I mean humans. I mean also, actually, I always think that.
Well, this should have happened decades ago. But you do love this next story. You said you cried.
I love this story. I saw it and, I just thought, well, I better read it. And it's very short and I read it and I cried. It's about the elephants. You might have heard of this. And the elephants form alert circle during earthquake at San Diego Zoo Safari Park. It's watching the video that really got to me. I mean, that's the whole story. There was that earthquake. It wasn't huge, but it definitely wasn't nothing in San Diego. And these elephants who were in the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, which is kind of an open enclosure. It had maybe, I think, around 3 adults and 2 younger ones. And then I watched the video and these elephants that it's just so heartbreaking. Not heartbreaking, but there they are. And they form this circle and they put the babies, so they're the young, in the middle to protect. I mean, I'm not sure they knew exactly what the harm was, but they knew something was wrong. It's just so beautiful to watch. But the thing that I really wanted to talk about, it's not in the article itself, but in the social media post, it talked about that they were using their instinct. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's so interesting how differently we use instinct or think about instinct. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people don't think like this. But if somebody wrote a story and said, this mother instinctively grabbed her child to protect him from whatever, the earthquake or anything else, we would not think that she was brainless. We would think that, it was both an impulse that caused her to think how to do the right thing. But I feel like when it comes to animals, a lot of people use instinct in this way of that they weren't thinking at all, just some kind of nameless force like caused them to do this without any like consciousness. I don't know whether people think that or not, but I think the use of that word when they use the word instinct really implies that.
When you told me this when we were preparing to record, you blew my mind. This opened up my brain. Like I had to go revisit the billions of times people have used the word instinct as it relates to animals in the 45 and a half years that I've been alive and get angry at every single time. Like, you're totally right. It's like,
So
you know what?
agree that is how people take it.
It reminds me of when the vet was at your house and like giving a shot or something to your dog who was upset, and then the vet said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
It was the vet tech.
The vet tech said, "Don't worry about it. Like animals feel pain differently or something."
Yeah.
I don't know why it reminds me of that.
We just tell ourselves yeah, because we tell ourselves whatever we want to think about animals. Like that makes us feel better about what we do to them.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't anything wrong in what she was doing, but that's the argument that excuses a million different cruelties that are posed on animals.
I mean, you know what? Like, I remember, this is so weird that this is coming back to me. I remember, let's say 25 years ago, maybe a little more than that, I was dating a guy for a long time. I dated men then. And I remember we had this conversation about men and monogamy, and he said that like it is an instinct of men to like go get laid all the time outside of your relationship. I just remember he said that. Of course I became a lesbian, so the joke's on him. But
I'm sure he's still laughing.
Probably. But I guess the point is that like we could use the word instinct for anything that would be convenient or dismissive.
But the way we use it with animals is different. It's like if it's instinct, they're just like machines. It's like they're programmed to do that.
Right.
And they don't have to think it through. Like we do have instincts. I think it is, instinctive of people to have sex, that's for sure. But that's not the only thing that goes into your decision to have sex. Like the fact that that your body is pushing you to do that. Like there's you do have decision-making capability. And so do animals. I mean, they knew there was danger and they knew what they had to do. And how much that was driven by something innate and how much it was driven by their brains. It's like, the same thing with humans. Exactly the same thing with humans. Like, anyway.
All right.
Let's move on.
So Ridgeland Farms.
I don't get this article. I'm really confused by this. We'll have to find out more.
The one that we're about to talk about?
Yeah, the Ridgeland Farms article.
Yeah, so it's a Wisconsin beagle breeding facility for labs. And as I understand it, it's suing the nonprofit Dane for Dogs over protests and social media posts that expose alleged animal abuse.
Yeah, and of course, I did an Animal Law podcast interview about this whole case, and it involved this criminal prosecution against Direct Action Everywhere activists who had gone in and found out the horrific conditions of these beagles who were held in Ridgeland Farms. And at the last minute, after 2 years of prep, and, it takes a lot to prepare for a defense to a criminal prosecution, at the last minute, the DA dropped the charges at the behest of Ridgeland Farms, who made this bullshit nonsense statement that they were afraid of being, like, attacked or something. They just didn't want it to be publicized. And Dane for Dogs was also involved in the undercover work. I'm not sure exactly who did what. So that happened, and the case was just dismissed in 2024, as this article points out. And then a special prosecutor was appointed just this past February to investigate Ridgeland Farms for alleged animal cruelty, illegal animal cruelty. So the activists have totally turned the tables. They were being prosecuted for breaking in and allegedly stealing animals, and that got dropped. And then they got a special prosecutor appointed, which was really great, by the court to investigate whether there was animal cruelty going on. So Ridgeland Farms obviously is pissed off. And now they are suing Dane for Dogs. They're not suing Direct Action Everywhere, as far as I know. And some of their employees who testified at the evidentiary hearing saying that they misrepresented what really happened, and I guess that they made false statements.
God.
Which it just means like I think they're walking right into a disaster. Like this is just an opportunity to bring even more attention to what was really going on at Richland Farms, and I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt about what was really going on.
No.
So I don't know why they would be doing this.
Well,
but
it looks.
I'm looking forward to hearing the next steps.
Yeah, it's like the lawsuit. It's less like a defensive business, and it's more like an attempt to silence criticism, and that always backfires. So
well, actually, it doesn't always backfire.
All right, it doesn't always.
Let's hope it backfires here.
Let's hope it backfires. So, speaking of animal activism, this is, this makes me think a little bit about
interesting issue.
Yeah, this is feels related to the recent podcast interview we did with some folks with the Animal Policy Alliance from the Humane League when they were talking about foie gras, because this is foie gras related.
Yeah, and it's just an interesting approach. It reminds me kind of like anybody who is old as I am and goes back as far. Some of the techniques used by the Shack campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this pizza parlor. It's in Chicago. And they don't serve foie gras, but they do business with Omni Hotels. I'm not sure exactly what business. I'm assuming that they're on some kind of list of places you can order takeout from at Omni Hotels, but I could be totally making that up. But some kind of business with them. Omni Hotel serves foie gras. And so these activists did a campaign of protesting at the pizza parlor, in which case the owner of the pizza parlor immediately got on the hotel with Omni Hotels and said, this is terrible for me and get me off that list. And then invited everybody in for vegan pizza, which I guess they serve vegan pizza. I don't know how I feel about this, but I do understand the technique, because if these activists tried to protest against the actual perpetrator, Omni Hotels, they probably would end up in some, free speech zone 3 blocks away and then get arrested or whatever. It's like hard to do a protest. And there's not a lot of activists. And obviously they could make a big splash in front of this pizza parlor. At the same time, it's a little uncomfortable. But it seems like it worked out really well. So interesting. What do you think?
I think that there's a lot of value in some of those more old sort of grassroots efforts that...
I don't object to it being grassroots or anything. It's just like doing a protest against, somebody who's just doing business with the actual perpetrator.
Yeah.
And that's not related to foie gras at all, as far as I can figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought people would be interested to hear that.
Every time you say Omni Hotel, I'm brought back to the 90s when I would watch Oprah after school every day at 4:00. I mean, I was in both high school and college in the 90s. And at the very end, she would say, the Omni Hotel. And that's all I keep thinking about.
You know why I don't know that?
Because you have a life.
I never watched Oprah.
I've saw like every episode.
I worked then. Of course I've seen like clips from Oprah, but I never sat down and watched the show. I don't really like chat shows anyway. All right, we have one more thing to do. We'll have a bunch more things to do.
Okay, yeah.
And these are all good. I have a bunch of books.
Yeah, they have been like, your house has started to cave in on one side because
I have a problem with books.
You do.
That's true.
You do. And people send us books all the time.
Well, sometimes. And sometimes I just feel bad because, I don't read that fast. I don't read that much. Like, sometimes I read them. Sometimes I just wish other people would know about them so they could read them. So that's what I'm going to do. Actually, the first book I want to talk about is a book I have read. And we recently had Jim Mason on the podcast. And he is, of course, one of the greatest animal activists there is. And he wrote a book a long time ago called An Unnatural Order, which was one of my seminal books that really changed the way I thought about animals and our relationship to them. And it goes way back in prehistory to talk about how we went so awry in our relationship to animals. And so recently he wrote this new book. It's very short, so it's much less of a commitment than An Unnatural Order, which is not a huge leap, but this is very short. It's, I think, around 100 pages. And it's called Madness, the Deep Driver of Our Climate Crisis, Lessons from My Family Farm. And it's wonderful. I think he self-published it. I wish it was going to get more attention than it is. I want everybody who's listening to pay attention to it, because he kind of interweaves these stories I'm talking about prehistory and how we ended up like just going so wrong in how we relate to animals and not understanding animals. And he interweaves that with stories of him growing up. He grew up on a farm in Missouri, mostly in the 40s, talking about, obviously, you know, his childhood extended, or his young adulthood extended into the 50s. And also, like, it starts out with a story, which I'd heard before, of a traumatic event that happened to him when he saw some pigs being slaughtered. And he had to be taken away to his relative's house for several days because he was so deeply traumatized. But I hadn't realized then that he actually became very used to, the farm culture and dealing with animals and stuff that he does not feel great about now. But he tells these stories that really bring back, like, this wasn't that long ago. I mean, you know, obviously he's still alive. And it was pre-factory farming. And, you know, it was really in the 50s that the factory farming took hold. And when it took hold really fast. And then, of course, he became very involved. Later in life, you know, he had a tragic loss, and that probably influenced him in moving to becoming an activist. And it's great. I highly recommend it. And
say the name again.
Madness, the deep driver of our climate crisis, lessons from my family farm, by Jim Mason.
We will link to it in the show notes as well.
All right. I have a few other books that I haven't read. I should read, but, you know, I can only do so much. This is a fascinating book. It's called Creature Needs. I'll just read from the back. It's a polyvocal call, which means that there are a lot of different voices, contributors to it, about animal extinction that harnesses the power of literature and scientific research to stir our hearts toward action and change. A collection of new literary works paired with excerpts from recent scientific articles that inspired and informed them. And it really is a fascinating way to do it. They have each author, some of them are poets, some of them are authors, like just different kind of creative work. I guess they were given a scientific report on a specific species of animal that is in trouble. And they wrote a creative piece related to that animal and to the peril that faces them. And it's really a lovely book. It's from the University of Minnesota Press. Mm-hmm. And this is one that I'm really going to try to put aside to read myself, because you can read it in short pieces. Subhuman is a book by Emma Haakenson. The subtitle is A 21st Century Ethic on Animals, Collective Liberation, and Us All. And the back cover says, when we accept oppression of some, we feed the oppression of others, and we make space for domination driven by false ideas of inferiority and lesser worth. When we discount the inherent preciousness of animals who think and feel, we erase precious parts of ourselves. When we consider living beings as livestock, it's no wonder we pillage the unthinking yet irreplaceable living earth. I understand this was, Emma is a lecturer and writer. She's written for The Guardian, Forbes, etc., etc. And it's, from what I understand, this book started out as her pandemic project. And, you know, I totally wasted the pandemic. She wrote this book. It looks excellent.
Wow, a lot of people's pandemic project was to make sourdough bread.
Or drink wine.
Yeah.
Not that was me.
No.
All right. Our friend Gretchen Primack sent us this book of poetry by Nicole Brown, To Those Who Were Our First Gods, which actually, that is really a superb title and very much goes back to Jim Mason's theories about how we felt about animals before we were who we are now. And they were we recognized that they were like us, but they were so much better than us at so many things. And so To Those Who Were Our First Gods really brings that home. It's a book of poetry. So if you are a fan of poetry, I'm sure anything that Gretchen recommended is going to be terrific. To Those Who Were Our First Gods by Nicole Brown. And she didn't know I was going to do this, but the final book is one of the best books that you can own about why you should go vegan, how you should go vegan. And it's a book, I imagine most of you are already vegan, but if you're not, this is the book to buy your friends and relatives. It's The Veg News Guide to Being a Fabulous Vegan.
What?
Look good, feel good, and do good in 30 days by Jasmin Singer and Veg News Magazine. This book is so good. It really is. It manages to, it has a Veg News style, so it's bright and breezy, and it's got great colors, and it's written in Jasmine's signature style of being bright and breezy and funny. And it has lots about food. It has a few recipes. She didn't write the recipes, don't worry. And but a lot of stuff about food and, all the techniques of going vegan. And somehow it manages to weave in what's happening to animals. So you can kind of trick people. It's for the people in your life who are flirting with it, who are thinking about it. It is the best book of its kind, and I'm not just saying that.
Wow, thank you.
So those are my reviews for the day.
That's
and,
so nice.
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed going through all those books.
I think
I feel like I accomplished a lot, and I didn't actually have to read them.
Well,
not that I don't love reading, but yeah. There's only so much time in a day.
I get it. I really do. And that's why, I listen to books constantly. I mean, I try and do like 5 a month that I listen to, but I'm always editing, for my other work. And so I really can't sit
and
there.
sometimes if I am going to sit down and read, I want to get away from the animal stuff.
Yeah, right. I get it.
Not jump into it.
Well, that was our Hen Report, and I'm glad that you stuck with us. Thank you, Sandy, for sticking with us. There, I said her name. We're just really grateful.
Oh my gosh, I never would have guessed.
Well, yeah. And Mariann, I know you have rising anxieties this week as well, so
yes.
That's exciting.
And, we do have plans about reordering the podcast a bit, but for now, yeah, rising anxieties is going to follow this. Mm-hmm. And, it's the usual bullshit.
The usual bullshit.
From the industry.
From the industry with one Mariann Sullivan, right after this. Are you passionate about making real and lasting change for farmed animals? I mean, if you're still listening, you probably are. Then don't miss our upcoming series with the Animal Policy Alliance. This powerful new series highlights leaders from a collective network of organizations brought together by the Humane League, all working tirelessly to advance public policy to stop the abuse of animals raised for food and fur. So tune in to hear from the changemakers themselves, the ones who are shaping policy near you and creating a better future for animals. Every episode will be packed with strategic campaign insights, real stories from activists on the ground, and tangible ways that you can be a part of the change. Because everyone can help animals with legal protections. Visit ourhenhouse.org/Animal Policy Alliance to learn more.
Anxieties are rising. Our first story is a doozy. 5 ways to protect your farm from animal activists. This is from Pork Business, one of my favorite publications. It starts off by talking about this recent undercover video that was released. It does not say where it was filmed. The person who's talking is Kara Hayden, who's a vet, director of animal welfare at Pipestone, which I guess is a pork place. And she's thankful it wasn't a Pipestone farm. She says it's, quote, still incredibly frustrating that someone got into a pig barn and produced a video with the intention of making the pork industry look bad. Well, that happens all the time. But what's really amazing is that she goes on to say, apparently, this undercover person couldn't find any abuse going on at the farm. So what they had to do is take normal things that happen on farms and try to make them look bad. I bet that wasn't that hard. And she specifically asks the readers not to go, please don't watch the video, as we don't want to drive any views. I'm not sure that's the only reason they don't want people to watch the video. And she's frustrated by the fact that, you can have perfect welfare, and it's not enough. Quote, if someone gets in, they can still try to make things look bad no matter how good your farm is. The article does point out that the video does not appear to be manipulated, which, is interesting because they're always claiming that videos are manipulated. But the video content was produced to manipulate the viewer. For one thing, it says that the sows are too long for their crates, when it's evident the sows had plenty of room at the other end of the crate, which kind of if it was evident that they had plenty of room, then the people watching the video would know that, right? Okay, that doesn't make too much sense. All right, they talk about gestation stalls and how the sows can't turn around. And I know you're thinking, well, she's going to somehow claim that, of course, they could turn around, but of course not. I mean, because they can't turn around. And so the claim is from a welfare professional standpoint, there are gives and takes to those sorts of things. Yeah, turning around, not turning around, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. All right, that was me talking. She just says there's pros and cons. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that. The truth is, this article says, animal activists don't care about improving animal welfare. They want to end animal agriculture. Well, kind of like to do both. And so she has all these things that people can do to try to prevent this dreadful thing of them taking film and showing it to people of what you're doing and then not manipulating the film and claiming that that's inhumane when obviously it's not, because animal professionals say that it's not. All right. Quote, 1, educate your team. Quote, have multiple discussions on welfare and animal handling topics. This is from this guy at JBS. Most importantly, reinforce if you see something, say something. Okay. One, it's important to discuss welfare. It's important to discuss animal handling, but the most important thing is if you see something, say something, i.e., if you see somebody taking film of you, speak up. All right. 2, quote, carefully screen potential employees in the interview process. Yeah. Apparently, they want them to have a group interview these people. And even though that can be intimidating, no wonder these people can't find anybody to work for them. They have interviews done by groups, and then after it's over, they debrief and question whether there was really an undercover operative and was anything said or done that gives us pause. Okay, no, it's not hard to believe they have trouble hiring people. Keep a vigilant watch in the barn. Look for suspicious activity. Quote, if they're not a caregiver trained in euthanasia yet, they shouldn't be hanging out in the euthanasia or mortality. I wonder what the difference is between the euthanasia and the mortality area. It's all pretty gruesome because, as we all know, euthanasia has come to being a lot of things other than euthanasia. And, in the interview, like, why are they really there? Quote, if someone wants to work in South Dakota and they have no reason to be there because they have no connection to the area, that's suspicious. I mean, poor South Dakota. Apparently, there's absolutely no reason anybody would ever want to be there other than, if their family is there. Tell your story. And this guy, Brad Eckberg, who's at MTech Systems, thinks they've been doing a great job. They've shown people that they're not like this, and all the undercover investigations became an opportunity for these companies to open up their doors to outsiders. Really? Like, are the doors open? I was not aware of that. That's so good to know. All right, that one is hilarious. In, a gruesome, horrible, disgusting sort of way. All right, farmer-focused packaging redesign bets big on ESG. This is from Watt Poultry by Elizabeth Doman. And the subtitle is, Consumers Increasingly Choose to Spend Money with Brands That Match Their Values, Showing the Importance of Environmental, Social, and Governance Goals. And this really does go to the rising anxieties of the industry. Well, the other article kind of did too. Because, consumers... people are worried. They're not worried enough yet to do anything about it. And it's not everybody who's worried, but all right. So they have this farmer focus label. And it seems to be that this is one of these groups that, contracts with farmers who are doing the actual raising. And this is for organic and free range. And it has this little picture on the label of some guy, I assume it's a guy, in a cowboy hat holding the hand of a little person in a cowboy hat. And there's there's mountains in the background. It's just a shadow picture. It's not really elaborate. And there's a little chicken, and I guess another little chicken, walking around. Very sweet. And then there's all sorts of information on the label. Proudly raised on U.S. farms. No antibiotics ever. All natural and no added hormones. And there's a place you can find out more information if you click on it. According to this article, it highlights product traceability and transparency, as well as environmental, social, and governance branding. And, gives you the trace back to the chicken's farm of origin, so people can check that. And they just think this is really great packaging. All right, so I always wonder with these little pictures, exactly how accurate are they? So I went to the Farmer Focus standards. This isn't to say that everybody's following them, but, let's assume they are. And they have to follow certified humane. And, certainly better than a lot of chickens are raised. They have to have safe and clean shelter with, quote, room to roam, access to outdoor spaces to forage with protection from sunlight and predators. All right, looking in the standards, how much indoor space is allotted per bird for your indoor housing? No more than 6 pounds of chicken per square foot of space. Okay, doesn't seem like a lot to me. I don't, how much is 6 pounds of chicken? I guess it totally depends on how old the chickens are. How much outdoor space? You're thinking, well, the outdoors got to be better, because they're touting, that they have room to forage and everything. How much outdoor space is allotted per bird for your outdoor space? Our birds must have the same amount of space outside as they do inside. So I guess that's 6 pounds of chicken per square foot. Then they say 90% of our farmers exceed this minimum. Well, then why don't you change the minimum? like by how much do they exceed that minimum? That just makes it sound like it's a million times better than that. Yeah. Oh, God. Brits. We have an article about Brits. This is from our friends at Plant-Based News. Brits being, quote, systematically misled about meat, dairy, and eggs, study finds. Yeah, not at all surprising. A new report by the Animal Law Foundation reveals that most depictions of animal farming do not accurately represent the industry. This doesn't surprise any of us, but I am excited to hear that the Animal Law Foundation is involved. We recently interviewed its executive director, Edie Bowles, on the Animal Law podcast, and she noted that something has clearly gone wrong, particularly when so many British consumers care about animal welfare. And their findings indicate that the pastoral image of animal farming in marketing does not represent reality. Yeah, no shit. And most farmed animals, about 85% in the UK, are raised on factory farms. And apparently they went through all of these labels. Almost all of them have pictures of animals outside, and only 3 of the 47 producers that were shown did not use photos of animals at all. And of the 44 that did use animals, 84% used imagery of animals living outdoors. And all the major supermarket websites also featured images of healthy animals living outdoors, and et cetera, et cetera. No wonder, you wonder why people have the wrong information and the wrong attitude about what their farming industry is really like. It's because that's what they're being told. This article also mentions that there's a new law that explicitly prohibits unfair commercial practices such as providing false or misleading information to sell a product. Now, obviously, there was a predecessor law that did similar things, but it sounds like from this article, it doesn't actually say it, but the new law is due to come into effect in April, so this month. And one would guess that, maybe they toughened up that law. And since the people who did this survey are the Animal Law Foundation, I'm looking forward to hearing what happens and what comes out of that. Sounds pretty interesting to me. All right, finally, new Food Security and Farm Protection Act protects farmers and consumers from government overreach. I love that title. This is from porkbusiness.com, and it's about Prop 12, and they've just renamed the EATS Act. Now they call it the Food Security and Farm Protection Act. And they've introduced it again, and they really, 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 really want to get it passed. And their point, which I particularly love, is protecting farmers and consumers, protecting farmers from government overreach. I mean, farmers, can we stop the overreach of the government giving them boatloads of money? Is that okay? California's Proposition 12 has devastated family farms, fueled market consolidation, and increased food costs. Legislators brought forward the Food Security and Farm Protection Act to protect farmers and consumers from burdensome government overreach. Now, as we all know, because we've, said it 10 billion trillion times, California's law only applies to pork sold in California. If you don't want to sell pork in California, nobody's forcing you to. And they passed that law with a large proportion of the citizens of California voting for it. It starts off by saying, after the U.S. Supreme Court left an open invitation for Congress to strike down California's Proposition 12, which is a very interesting way of putting the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court determined that it wasn't unconstitutional, which means that it would be constitutional if Congress did it. It wasn't unconstitutional to have California do it, so it's all fine. All right, the senators involved here are Joni Ernst, who is Republican of Iowa, Chuck Grassley is Republican of Iowa, and Roger Marshall is Republican of Kansas. So this would prohibit any state or local government from interfering with commerce and agricultural practices in another state outside their jurisdiction. Once again, only refers to pork sold in California, and nobody is forcing anybody to sell their pork in California. They always just leave these things out. And they talk about how they would hit small and medium-sized pork producers. Of course, they would also like the large pork producers, which is where the vast majority of pork comes from, to be included. And family farms, you just can't talk about families enough when it comes to farms, because apparently the rest of us don't have families. Many farm families are contemplating whether they can pass along the farm to the next generation. And Midwest farmers and ranchers who produce our nation's food supply should not be hamstrung by coastal activist agendas that dictate production standards from hundreds of miles away. Yet they dictate production standards for the pork sold in California and Massachusetts, of course. They're both coastal. It's just outrageous. How dare they be on the coast? Another way they put it is Proposition 12 has already proven to be an unfunded mandate, with consumers unwilling to pay premiums for the products that must be compliant with the proposition, i.e., did I mention that it only applies in California? Oh, and Massachusetts. I should have said that because they also passed a law. All right, so people voted for it. And if they're unwilling to pay the premiums for the products, that means that people are unwilling to buy pork if it's raised in even minimally less inhumane way. And I think that might be what the industry is so worried about. They also dragged in the Iowa Corn Growers Association and the soybean people. They're dragging in these other, and the Turkey Federation. And according to Grassley, our bill will end California's war on breakfast. I had breakfast this morning. It didn't have any pork in it. And that's it for this week's Rising Anxieties.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Changing the World for Animals here at Our Hen House. Ready to dive deeper into these crucial conversations? Our flock community gets exclusive access to live podcast recordings where you can ask guests your questions directly, plus weekly bonus content that'll keep you inspired between episodes.
Our membership tiers are as fun as they are impactful. From our Chick Click to our Barnyard benefactors, there's a perfect perch for everyone, starting at just $10 a month or $100 a year. And yes, it's all tax deductible. Fly over to ourhenhouse.org/support to join the flock.
Missing us between episodes? Follow us at Our Hen House on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky for daily doses of inspiration. And hey, those 5-star reviews and ratings, they actually really help us, and they help other advocates to find us. So please spread the love. Thank you in advance.
To our current supporters, you keep these conversations going, and we're so grateful. Thanks to our incredible team. That's me.
Thanks to Mariann.
Jasmin Singer, my brilliant co-host. Vicky Beechler, our producer extraordinaire. Michael Harron, our composer. Jen Riley for her amazing support. And Veronica Kolinska for our eye-catching graphics.
Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss next week's episodes. Subscribe to the Animal Law Podcast too. And thank you so much for your compassion and your dedication to animals. See you next week.